and welcome to Saints Live. I'm Steve Forbes.
And I'm Kenzie Benali.
And today, Southampton return to Premier League action with a trip to the G-Tech Community Stadium to take on Brentford. Now, the Saints did manage to get two new additions over the line on transfer deadline day, so it could be a chance, Kenzie, for the travelling fans to see them in action this afternoon.
Oh, yeah, that was amazing to see, Steve, and looking forward to seeing what they can bring to the club.
Yeah, very much so. But unfortunately, there wasn't the transfer budget to bring any new additions into the Saints Live team on deadline day. So we're sticking with the old guard and welcoming back former Southampton captain Dean Hammond and NBC's lead soccer writer Joe Prince-Wright. Dean, return to Premier League action for Southampton. You looking forward to it?
I am, Stephen. Like you said, you can't beat experience, mate. So, yeah, you're stuck with us, unfortunately. But yeah, looking forward to it. A chance for the players to respond and react after the midweek game. But yeah, looking forward to the game. Tough game against Brentford. They're a very, very good team, but this is an improving Southampton team. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And Joe, it's been a while. How have you been? You still out in the States?
Yes, so it's great to be back with you guys. And yeah, I'm down in Florida at the moment. So I'm officially now a member of the Florida Saints, at least for this weekend. So yeah, really great to be back with you guys. I've been following closely from my travels here in the USA. And I'm really looking forward to seeing potentially these new signings and how Saints set up. As Dean mentioned, really tough task today against Brentford. But I feel like Saints are heading in the right direction now under Nathan Jones. And now it's all about turning that into points.
Oh, it's all right for some, isn't it? I think you should take us on the road with you next time, Joe. A little Saints Live on the road. Well, listen, team news coming your way in 15 minutes time, just under now. So let's get to the early team news, shall we? You can see the Saints team arriving at the Brentford Community Stadium earlier on. What do we know so far? Well, Tino Livramento, Stuart Armstrong and Juan Larios are still out. Good news, though, Kyle Walker-Peters is available, though, after being subbed off against Newcastle as a precaution. And deadline day signings, Paul Onuachu and Kamaldeen Sulemana have travelled as well to Brentford, so we'll have to see if they feature later on. Dean, what do you think Nathan Jones is going to do with his starting lineup today then, with all that in mind?
Well, I think the biggest question, Kenzie, is probably at the moment is the shape, whether he'll stick with the 3-5-2, which unfortunately didn't work in that first period against Newcastle during the week. Or would he go back to the 4-3-3, which did work and seems to work in terms of response when Southampton are behind in a game or having challenging moments in a game? Will the new signings come in straight away, or will they make an impact off the bench? That would be interesting to see because they're very fresh to the squad and to the club. But I could see potentially Nathan sticking with the 3-5-2. I think maybe Perro coming in at left back from his performance in the FA Cup and getting the 2 goals, and having that balance in the side, a left-footed player at left back, I think always helps. I think Lavia will potentially come into the midfield area. He had a real impact when he came on in midweek and looks up to speed again. He's kind of come in for an hour, 70 minutes here and there. I think he looks fit and raring to go, and will be and can be a really important player for Southampton this season. So that's a really important. I think Bree will continue at right back or right wing back, depending on the shape. And it's whether Nathan goes with 2 up front. I think that's the interesting question. Shay Adams is coming off a fantastic goal against Newcastle. And we know with Shay, once he gets 1, he tends to get 2, tends to get 3. So I'm sure he'll be in the starting lineup today. But lots of options within the squad. So Nathan will have a little bit of a headache, but he'll want that. He'll want those options. And the squad is strong now. There's a lot of bodies within this group. And that bodes well. You need that if you're going to win games and you're going to get points, because so many things happen during a game, and it's having that versatility and that flexibility to make changes. And we've seen from Nathan that he's willing to do that and willing to react pretty quickly. So I'm really interested to see in the team today. But the biggest question mark for me is what shape will Nathan go with?
Yeah, Joe, we have seen that Nathan isn't afraid to make changes either to the formation or the lineup. So which team do you think he's going to pick today?
Yeah, who knows, really, Steve? I think it's surprising every time you see the team sheet, to be honest. As Dean mentioned there, the shape is the biggest thing. But I think they'll go toe-to-toe with Brentford as well. I think they probably will play that 3-5-2 or 3-4-1, whatever you want to call it. 3 at the back, 5 at the back, because Brentford are so good at doing it. They're a well-oiled machine. They play with two up top and have players coming in from wide areas. And I think you'll need a bit of extra cover defensively there. So, it was better to go to a back four in that second half against Newcastle, and that worked really well. And I think maybe suits this group of players better long term. But in the short term, Saints have been really tough to beat in recent weeks. The defeats have been 1-0. They've been in games. It's been just, flip of a coin moments. So they need to kind of just keep themselves in this game as long as possible. And I think the best course of that is probably to stick with the 3-5-2 and then go from there. So I think they're flexible. And I think that Ivan Toney and Buemo, just those two, you have to keep them quiet. But I'm intrigued to see, like Dean said, if Pero comes in at left wing back, then is Kyle Walker-Peters fit enough to start as right wing back? And then maybe James Bree, he can play as a right-sided centre-back as well. So that might be something to look for. And Lavia was excellent when he came on against Newcastle. So he has to start. We have to see more of those forward passes, like when he found Adam Armstrong against Newcastle for that big chance in the second half. So a lot of options, a lot of players. And hopefully we get to see these new guys and they make a big impact.
Yes, indeed, lots of options. And for those of you watching along at home, do make sure you're sending us in your comments and thoughts on the lineup, which we'll be bringing you in less than 10 minutes' time. Well, Dean, looking back to Tuesday then, obviously disappointing not to make it to a final at Wembley. But how would you assess Southampton's performance that night?
Well, they improved, Kenzie, and they grew into the game. But unfortunately, the first 20 minutes, they suffered, really, and it cost Southampton, unfortunately. Newcastle started at a real high intensity, a real pace, a real intent to get that early goal and try and kill the tie, and they did that after 4 minutes. And I think the frustration, we spoke about it, was the fact that it's just those individual errors, really. Players not staying with their runners, not doing the horrible side of the game, which you need to, unfortunately. But Southampton grew into it. Once they changed shape, I thought they were very, very good and really gave Newcastle a run for their money. The goal from Shea is fantastic, scored at a great time. And Shea's so good at doing that. That's the instinctive finish that he has. It's a brilliant strike against a fantastic goalkeeper. And this pass from Lavia, the movement from Adam Armstrong. And it's that moment again. If Adam scores there, who knows? Who knows what happens then? Newcastle go down to 10 men. Can Southampton get back into it? Can they force it into extra time? We have the sending off, which I think is definitely a sending off. So it was a brilliant cup tie. It really, really was. And it was evenly matched after the first 20 minutes. So credit to Southampton, because Newcastle are a really, really good team. They're having a fantastic year in the Premier League. They're now in a cup final. And Eddie Howe has got them really, really going. So they're a good example for Southampton. This time last year, Newcastle were struggling. They're not the force they are now, but the progression they've showed, it's an example for what can be done and maybe what Southampton could be looking to do. So the players gave a good account of themselves, but there will be disappointment because of that first 20 minutes. We spoke about it. Stay in the game, frustrate Newcastle, quieten the crowd. Unfortunately, they didn't get the chance to do that.
We saw Shea's goal in the highlights there, and that was his first since a brace against Lincoln, Joe. And I suppose that strike just kind of reminds us of what he's actually capable of.
So true, Steve. And I think for Shea, it was one of those moments where it's like the incredible technique, no hesitation. And it kind of sums up where he and the Saints team are at right now. I think they're at their best when they're aggressive, brave, go for it, and almost are on autopilot and aren't thinking about things too much. So, I mean, at this point of the game, obviously Saints and Shea Adams had nothing to lose. They needed a goal. But, I mean, as I said there, didn't have to think about it. It dropped to him. And he does score screamers like this. If we think about the goal against Man City from long range, he had one against Sheffield United a few years ago, right, when he belted it in at Bramall Lane. And he's got this in his locker, very capable of producing this. So the next step for him, as we all know, and he's admitted it himself, is he needs to score and convert more of those easier chances. And if he can do that, he'll get up to 15 plus goals a season, because we know he's capable of strikes like this. And Shea Adams in this kind of form, if he's playing up top on his own, I still think it's not the best role for him. So I think with the new additions coming in, they'll really help bring out the best in him. And he can kind of play as that man just off a target forward, perhaps, if Pornachu comes in today or for the next few weeks and few months. So I'm pleased for Shea, because you could tell when he went through in the first leg against Newcastle, had that big chance, the confidence had just drained from him with some of the big misses recently. So that goal should do his confidence the world of good. And then, yeah, like he's admitted himself, just try and convert some of those easier chances, because he is so capable and has the ability to smash in beauties like that.
Oh, it really was a beauty, wasn't it? Unbelievable goal. All right, then, time to hear from the boss now. This is what Nathan Jones had to say on Southampton's transfer window.
That word you've used a lot in press conferences as well, potency. These two new lads, especially that came through on deadline day, did they give you that, do you think? And that could be maybe the difference between staying up or going down?
Absolutely. We recognised areas that we needed, in terms of things. We recognised a little bit of experience we needed, so we brought Yanni B back. We needed competition and a little bit of size in the wide areas in terms of fullbacks, and someone that gives us a little bit more orthodox. We've got some wonderful fullbacks here, and this just adds to the quality. We're always looking at the future, so Carlos is a top midfielder for the future. He'll play his part now, but he's definitely one for the future. And then we've added 3 that will give us real potency in terms of Orsic, who's gathering momentum, then Kamaldeen and Paul. So, we've really strengthened the squad, and I'm really happy with that. My problem now is picking the squad.
And Nathan Jones was speaking there about having competition at full-back. Dean, James Bree made his full debut against Newcastle in the Cup. How do you think he did that night?
I think he done okay, Steve, for his first start at this level. The occasion, it was a big occasion, and he grew into the game. Like a few of the other players in the Southampton team, he grew into the game. I think once we changed shape, it helped him from going from wing back to more of a traditional right back. But he looks like in terms of his size, he looks like he's physically capable at this level. I think Nathan's mentioned that he wanted a bit more size in the full back area defensively. And James Bree gives you that. He was comfortable in possession of the ball, which is what you always want. The modern day fullbacks have to be part of your attacking play as well. He looks fit. He looked like he had a turn of pace. And in the second half, I like the way he linked up with Samadozi. There were some really, really good moments of those two combined really, really well, whether he was overlapping to get across, whether it was a 1-2 to then get a Dozy in. There was a moment in the second half, I think it's coming up here on the highlights, lovely one-touch football, good movement from Samadozi, a lovely way to pass. And that's really, really good football and really, really effective football. And that would give James Bree some confidence, because until you play at this level, you do question yourself. You believe you can, but you don't know. But I think he showed in the second half that he can be a really good addition to this group. Joe touched on it. He's got versatility, so he can play in a number of positions on that right-hand side, which Nathan has wanted within the group. So I'm looking forward to seeing him develop at Southampton, and at a good age as well. He's got some experience at the lower leagues. He's 25 years old. He's coming into his prime. I think it will be a good sign.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, Joe, sticking at fullback, Roman Perraud started on the bench against Newcastle despite getting 2 goals against Blackpool last weekend. Was he unfortunate not to get a place in the starting 11?
I think so. I think he's so good going forward, right? And if Saints are playing this 3-5-2 system, he's great. He's perfect as a wing back. I think defensively, sometimes there's still a few reservations and maybe switching off or some of the bad giveaways from a passing perspective, but as you can see, the strikes here, we know from a pure ability from an attacking perspective, whether it be crosses or strikes like this, then he's got that in his locker. So Dean mentioned it earlier as well. It's more natural for Saints to have him on the left. It's more balanced with him on the left and Walker Peters on the right. And I think it just gives the team a really nice feel to it. So I think if Roman can just brush up on some of these defensive lapses, which are more lapses in concentration than anything else, then he should start. And I think he's just had a lot of competition in those fullback areas ever since he's been at Saints. But going forward, as we're seeing so many great moments and assists, goals, he has it in his locker. So just need to get him in the right areas, higher up the pitch as much as possible. So, I'm excited to see, hopefully, him scoring a lot more goals in a Saints shirt, because he's definitely got it in his locker.
Yeah, he certainly does. What a player indeed, hey?
Yeah, definitely. We've only got a few seconds to go until team news, where we can reveal who Nathan Jones will be picking this afternoon to take on Brentford at the G-Tech Community Stadium. And I can tell you that now. It's come straight in, hot off the press. And it's looking like Nathan's going to go with a 4-3-3 formation. New signings Paul Onuachu and Kamaldeen Sulemana are amongst the substitutes. And James Bree is going to make his first Premier League appearance for Southampton this afternoon. So the starting 11 in full is: in goal, Gavin Bazunu, James Bree, Jan Bednarek, Mohamed Salisu, Roman Perro, Romeo Lavia, Ibrahima Diallo, our captain James Ward-Prowse, Moy Elianusi, Shea Adams and Sam Adozie. And then as for the Southampton substitutes, we have Willie Caballero, Lianco, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Carlos Alcaraz, Joe Aribo, Kamaldeen Sulemana, Theo Walcott, Adam Armstrong and Paul Onuachu. Dean, what do you make of the team that Nathan selected for this afternoon?
Well, the shape, I think, is a shape that Southampton have probably had their best performances with, and their best moments under Nathan. That's not always starting in that manner. That's maybe changing during the game. So I think that's a good selection. Lavia coming into the team, I think, is really, really important. He is an excellent midfield player. He really is. He's got everything in that area in terms of defensively, very, very disciplined, excellent on the ball, so he can keep possession for Southampton, happy to receive the ball under pressure, which he'll need to do today. And then, like he showed against Newcastle, he's got a wonderful selection of pass going forward, and he'll happily play the ball forward. Elianusi coming back in gives you that midfield player willing to get into the box, willing to support the front man, can get a goal from midfield. Sam Adozie, I think, will play on the right-hand side, and I mentioned it with him and James Bree linking up. I think there was a bit of a relationship that was starting there. And Shea Adams up front with that confidence he's got from the goal against Newcastle. And then you have, the impact from the bench, the two new signings. I'm sure we'll see them today at some point. So there's some structure within the group. There's some discipline. There's a lot of energy and hard work within that group. And I think the selection shows that potentially it's to stay in the game and then maybe make some moves from the bench to try and win it later on.
Yeah, Joe, Nathan choosing to start with the back four today. And as Dean addressed, the travelling fans will have to wait to see the new signings come off the bench in West London today.
Yeah, no, I really like it. It's brave. I think maybe that's going to a back four is maybe after Nathan would have spoke to the players. And I think he's open to discussing with the players how they feel about the formations, how comfortable are they in certain situations and combinations across the pitch. So I think what you've probably seen there is the players go into them and say, we felt a lot better in that second half against Newcastle and in other games going to a back four. And long term, he may have an idea of Saints playing with a back 3 or 5, but it looks like right now he's kind of backed the players and said, okay, if you guys feel more comfortable playing this way, then we're going to go that way. And I think that's a good skill to have as a manager. The players trust him, trust that ultimately he has the main decision, but obviously there's an open sort of committee there where they can discuss things. And I think that's a really healthy thing to have. But Steve mentioned there, Lavia is going to be key, getting on the ball. Brentford press high, have a lot of bodies in that midfield area. So maybe having him and Diallo in those kind of holding roles and Ward-Prowse just ahead of them, I think that's a really good way to go. And yeah, I think the big sort of question mark is Jan Bednarek coming straight back into the fold. It's really intriguing to see him chuck straight back in right at the start of coming back to the club from Aston Villa after that loan spell. So yeah, intrigued, and I'm excited by the bench options as well. I just think, like I said at the start, need to stay in the game, don't beat yourselves, and then the last 20-30 minutes bring on the new boys, and hopefully they can become heroes for Saints on day one.
Yeah, let's hope so. All right, then, time to hear from the fans. Lots of you tuning in from all over the globe, as always, which is always brilliant to see. Scott Ingate is getting in touch on Facebook. He says it's a big game for us today. All teams around us have some really tough games, so a point or more against a very tough Brentford would be spot on. We've got another one here from Ricky Rhodes on Twitter. He says, please play well today, Saints. Please win today. Sammy also getting in touch. Hello, good afternoon. She says, says, match day, come on Saints. Another comment here on Twitter, London's cooling, away day. Another one here from Saints Sussex. Thanks for your comment. Looks like the majority would take a point today. Going to be a difficult game, but with our support we can get something. Let's get this one in from Sam from England on Twitter. Massive game today, win and hope a few results go our way. Would be nice if Arsenal beat Everton for us to start with. I believe Everton leading by a 1-0 as it stands, but of course, as we know, anything can happen. And St Paris is watching on YouTube. Thanks for your comment. And Jarko Harder says, come on you Saints, 3 points today please. But back to the new signings, Joe. Love to get your thoughts on Paul Onuachu in particular. I mean, the fans were crying out for a striker throughout January, weren't they? So they were pleased to see him come through the door last minute. What do you think he can bring to the side?
Just exactly what they needed, Kenzie, if I'm honest. He's got the size, he can be the focal point. What I love about watching his clips, again, because just lots of simple finishes. I think the obvious comparison to make is very similar to Graziano Pella. Saints never really replaced him and had another striker like that afterwards, and never really replaced the clinical finishing of Danny Ings, and that's been a problem over the last few seasons. So, yeah, and what I love about these goals is that, you know, he's obviously scored a lot, 79 goals in 114 top flight games in Belgium. That's an incredible record over the last few years. And I think his positioning is so good. When you watch him play, crosses are coming into the box, everyone gets drawn towards the ball, and he always sees to be the man in the right place at the right time, just to slot it home. A lot of tap-ins, a lot of headers inside the 6-yard box. So I think if Saints can get crosses into the box, he'll finish them off. And these skills, these can translate over. It does maybe take some players some time to settle into a new league, but in the interviews he's done already, seems fired up and fully focused, and he's sort of a late bloomer in his career as well. So I really like that. He's really hungry to achieve and prove. And, you know, he's left the team that was top of the Belgian league and could have easily stayed there, could have easily, you know, looked forward to Champions League football next season. But he's hungry to prove himself in the Premier League and be the main man for Saints. And I think that if he's up top and Shea Adams is playing off him in that 2 up top, if that's what Saints go with, at times this season, then they're going to be a real handful. They're physical, they'll give other teams so many problems in the air and just the runs they make. So, yeah, obviously he scores a lot of goals, and let's see if he can translate that to the Premier League. But I'm really excited, and, you know, the board and the owners have really backed the manager and the squad here, because this was the player they really have needed for a very long time now.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Dean, let's chat about our other new arrival, Kamaldeen Sulemana. He's a young, exciting forward from Rennes in France. What excites you about him?
It's something different, Steve, than we've got, really. Quick, really quick. I mean, I think it's something that Southampton have missed, really. He's got real outstanding pace, which you need in the Premier League. Very, very tricky. The ability to take his opponent on in one-on-one situations, and the willingness to take his opponent on, which is important, especially with the defensive structure that Nathan's set up in transition. When we're on the counter-attack, when you've got that pace, when you've got someone who can dribble with the ball and make you long distances up the pitch, it can really, really help. Goals as well. So a really exciting talent. I'm looking forward to seeing him play. I haven't seen too much of him, if I'm honest. But he's an international footballer. He's got experience of the World Cup, but only 20 years of age as well. So lots of development in him. And Joe's just mentioned with, you know, the strikers that we have at the football club. If he can get into attacking positions and get lots of crosses into the box, if he can take his fullback on, it's only going to help Southampton create more chances. And if you're creating more chances, you've got better options and chances of scoring goals, which we're lacking at the moment. We're not prolific, so it needs to improve. So a really good option, and I'm sure we'll see him today. And if the game opens up with a player like this, with space in front of him and in one-on-one situations, then we could have a really exciting player on our hands.
Joe, now that the transfer window has closed, how do you assess the new signings Southampton have made?
They're good. I think that definitely the squad is a lot stronger than it was at the start of January. The manager's admitted it, that he obviously would have wanted the players, some of them, to arrive a lot sooner. But, you know, with Onuachu and Kamaldeen coming in, that's a huge bonus. And again, like I mentioned, a real show of commitment by the owners and just saying, you know what, like we've needed these players for a while now. Let's go big. And, the bids were in for a long time. So I think it was more down to the other teams not wanting to let those good players go. But Saints have done some great business. I mean, Alcaraz looks like a great player for the future and is already having an impact. Bree is very solid, versatile, and can really slot in a lot of positions. Orsic is a finisher. We haven't seen the best from him yet. He's just getting himself up to speed, but there is more experience here, which I really like. With Onuachu coming in as well, there are players that are in their late 20s, early 30s, and then a mixture as well with some of the younger players in Camaldine and Alcaraz too. So, I think it was the second biggest spenders in the Premier League in January when it comes to net spend. So the owners have really backed the manager, and now it's down to him and the players to succeed because they have a huge squad there. But now it's all about freshening up. And I think a few weeks from now, we'll look at the starting lineup and there's going to be, 6 or 7 different players starting than there was last season. And the summer was good, needed a bit more experience. And this January window, I would argue if you had to rate it out of 10, probably a 9. And the only thing was trying to get those players in slightly earlier to play in the last few weeks. But now they're here. I think it was a really, really good window. And hopefully it all just gels together. Because Dean will tell you, sometimes you can bring in loads of great players, but it just doesn't gel. We've seen it at Chelsea, their struggles. So you just hope that the team spirit, the unity, these players can settle in very quickly and hit the ground running because Saints need them to, especially the attacking players.
Yeah, very much so. Well, let's focus on our opponents today. Brentford, they're on a pretty good run of form with only Newcastle and Arsenal having a longer unbeaten run in the Premier League. Dean, what kind of challenges do you think they'll pose today?
Well, lots, Steve, to be honest. Very, very aggressive team, a physical team, very intelligent in terms of the use of their set pieces, the long throw. They do I repeat myself quite a lot, but they do the basics very, very well, which is so important in football. They have obviously the threat of Ivan Toney up front, who's scoring goals at this level and is proven at this level. Got his chance in international football as well. You have the experience of Ben Mee at the back, which I think was a brilliant signing for Brentford, and I was very, very surprised more clubs didn't come in for him. And they've got that momentum and belief. Sitting 8th in the Premier League is a fantastic return for them. They've only lost, I think, 4 times this season, which is really impressive. They've beaten the likes of Man City. They've beaten Liverpool. Me and Joe were talking a bit before the show. They're particularly strong at home. There's a real intense atmosphere at their new stadium. It looks like they're enjoying playing there. So it's going to be a tough game. And Brentford are in great form because they've got a real togetherness and a real understanding of how they want to play and how they do play. So this is going to be a physical game today. But it was interesting. I was looking at the results. When they do get beat, they get beat quite heavy. So there's opportunities. They lost 4-0 at Aston Villa. They lost to Arsenal 3-0 earlier in the season. They lost 5-1 away at Newcastle. And in those fixtures, they conceded early goals. So if Southampton can start on the front foot and start well and get an early goal, you never know what can happen. But this will be a tough game today.
Oh, Dean giving us a bit of early insight into a hopefully very positive score prediction there. We'll get to that in just a moment. Before we do, though, Joe, we'll briefly touch on last season's game at Brentford. Obviously, that was a disappointing result. Please, could you talk us through it?
Yeah, sure. I'll try my best. But it was one of the low points of the campaign, I think, and some chance against the manager at the time, Ralph Hasenhüttl, from the away fans. It came at the end of a very, very bad run for Saints, and we're seeing Brentford are just sort of the masters, as Dean mentioned there, of just doing the basics well. Set piece situations, counter attacks. They bullied Saints in this game, and they're a very horrible, nasty team to play against. But that said, Saints did have a lot of good chances in this game, but they just couldn't finish them off, and that was kind of a running theme throughout the end of last season. I mean, Adam Armstrong had that goal disallowed, and really just kind of summed up everything that was going wrong for Saints at that time. So I just think that Brentford, though, they're such a good example for teams like Southampton and a blueprint on how to succeed in the Premier League, maybe against the bigger teams. Be aggressive, be direct, win those small individual battles all over the pitch. And set piece situations, they are really, really good from set pieces. So horrible team to play against. And as we're seeing here last season, very physical, a lot of challenges flying in, and just kind of did all those really basic things very, very well. So I'm intrigued to see how Saints match up. I think it's a real test of character and spirit today, because I've been at Brentford for a lot of their big wins against Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United at home. So they really do rise to the occasion in front of their home fans. And I mentioned it before in these shows. It reminds me of the Dell. It's so close to the pitch, the GTEC Community Stadium. Really good atmosphere there in West London. But I hope it will be the Saints fans in the away end that will be having a great Saturday afternoon today.
Well, we've come to that time, gentlemen, to get your final thoughts and those all-important score predictions. Dean, we'll come to you first. And are we going to hear maybe a Paul Belverson special of a 4 or a 5-0 win today?
He's not rubbed off on me that much, Steve. I must admit. But no, look, I'm feeling positive. It's going to be a tough game. Joe's just touched on many points why Brentford are doing so well this season, and Southampton are going to have to match that with work rate, with effort, a good defensive display. And I think we can see from the team selection, Nathan has considered all of that. I don't think there's going to be a lot of goals in the game, but I'm going to go for a positive 1-0 Southampton win. I think a clean sheet today for Southampton to win the game is almost a must, really. But that's going to be a tough task. But yeah, 1-0 Southampton win, and I think that would be a fantastic result.
Okay, and Joe, how do you see this afternoon going for Southampton?
It's interesting. I'm looking at the Brentford lineup, and it looks like they've switched to a back four. So I don't know. That's out of respect to try something different against Saints. So that's maybe a different challenge than we expected. But I like this matchup. I think Saints this season have kind of surprised us in these away games. If you think of the wins away at Everton and Leicester, I think they can follow a similar model in this game. And I'm going for a 2-1 win to Saints. I just think that with those new attacking players on the bench, that will give everyone a bit of a lift. Just stay in the game, like we mentioned, stay solid. They're getting better at doing that. Now they just need to get better at finishing off the chances when they arrive at big moments in the game. So, I'm going for a big 2-1 win for Saints away at Brentford.
Oh, we'll certainly take either one of those. Joe, Dean, thanks ever so much for your company. As always, we look forward to you rejoining us after the match. So, as we've said, it's Southampton taking on Brentford, and Brentford searching for their third successive home victory, whilst the Saints are looking to gain back-to-back away wins for the first time since June 2020. It's going to be a good one, and whatever happens in this one, we'll be back with you for the final whistle. So do make sure you join us then.
See you soon.